Greetings and welcome to another edition of Cepher Moments. I'm Dr. Stephen Bidgen. Today we're going to talk about the Cepher Ivriym, or the book of Hebrews, and this concept of entering into the rest of Mashiach. Okay? And so let's talk about this. You know, many Christians, when confronted with the obvious proscription concerning the guarding of the Shabbat and the seventh day of rest, often respond with the safe harbor that they believe exists in the Cepher Ivriym, or the book of Hebrews. The Cepher stakes out an interpretation that is disparate from other interpretations, and this difference is worthy of an explanation. Okay, and so we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about, does the book of Hebrews give you an exception that allows you to continue working yourself like a slave on the seventh day instead of taking that day off? Okay, so in chapter 4, there are several discrepancies. Now, let's take a look here, because in chapter 4, verse 1 through 10, let me read to you what's written in the Cepher of the Cepher Ivriym. Let us therefore fear, lest the promise being left of us entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. For unto us was the Besorah, the good news, preached, as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with belief in them that heard it. For we which have believed do enter into rest, as he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest. Now that's a direct quote from Tehillim, or Psalms 95:11. Although the works were finished from the foundation of the world, for he spoke in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise. And Yahweh did rest the seventh day from all his works. Now that's in Bereshith, chapter 2, verse 2. And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest, that's again Psalms, or Tehillim 95, verse 11b. Verse 6. Seeing therefore it remains that some must enter therein, and they to whom it was first preached entered not in because of unbelief. Again, he limits a certain day, saying in David, today, after so long a time, as it is said, today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. This is from Psalm 95, verse 7, or Tehillim. For if YAHUSHA, the son of Nun, had given them rest, perchance another would speak again of this day. There remains therefore a Shabbat for the people of Yah. For he that is entered into his rest, he also has ceased from his own works, as Yahweh did from his. There are three things that we will discuss in this passage. One, the insets that you find in this verse are quotes from the Tanakh. Two, the reference in verse 8 is to YAHUSHA, the son of Nun, or the son of Nun, and not to, quote-unquote, Jesus. 3. Verse 9 identifies a Shabbat for the people of Yah. Now let's compare this verse 8 and 9 and a couple of other translations, because we're going to see here that in the KJV and in the Geneva, we have a discrepancy. In the KJV it reads, in verse 8, for if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. In the 1599 Geneva, we see, for if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not after this have spoken of another day? There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. Now we can see that there's close similarity between the Geneva and the 1611 KJV. However, when we look at modern interpretations, we're going to get something different. Let's take a look at the NKJV for a moment. For if Joshua had given them rest, then he would not afterward have spoken of another day. There remains therefore a rest for the people of God. The NIV, the New International Version, in verse 8. For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken later about another day. There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. The ESV puts it this way, for if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken of another day later on. So then there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. The NASB reads, for if Joshua had given them rest, he would not have spoken of another day after that. So there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. Now it's very interesting that we have both Joshua and Sabbath identified in all of those 20th century interpretations. Only in the 1599 Geneva and in the 1611 KJV do we see Jesus named, and the word just arrest, right? Therefore, arrest to the people of God. Okay. All right. So, but you have to bear in mind that in the 1560 Geneva and in the 1611 KJV, the word was not Jesus, but was Jesus instead. So why would the NKJV, the NIV, the ESV, and the NASB use the word Joshua? Now, if you look in the Greek, you're going to find in that passage, if you look at the Stephanus Textus Receptus, or even if you look at the text by Westcott and Hort, you're going to find the Greek word, Jesus, in that passage, Jesus. Okay, so the name of Joshua in the Septuagint, in this sixth book of the Septuagint, Joshua, you're going to find that the word for Joshua in the Greek is Jesus. Jesus Nave is the name of the book, Jesus Nave. The name that the Greek interpreters used for Joshua was Jesus. So we know in the English his name is Joshua. We know in the Greek his name is Jesus. Well, what was his name in Hebrew? Well, that can be readily discussed and readily found if you look at accurate Masoretic texts and not latter texts that have been doctored by new editors, changing it. But in the original Masoretic, you're going to find Yod He Vav Shin Ayin. Yod He Vav Shin Ayin is the spelling for YAHUSHA, as what we would call Joshua. Okay? YAHUSHA is what we would call Joshua. Originally his name was Husha, like Hosea. But it was Husha, and you can see in most Hebrew texts, like Hebrew English Bibles, if you go to the book of Hosea, you'll find this He Vav Shin Ayin, Husha, as the name set forth there. And Yah was added by Moshe, YAHUSHA. So if you see that Jesus was the preferred interpretation of the name Joshua by the Septuagint writers, then you can see when you see Jesus here in the Stephanus Textus Receptus in this passage of Hebrews, that the modern interpreters would immediately interpret that Jesus found there as Joshua, not Jesus. Well, if you have Jesus in Hebrews as Joshua, why isn't it Joshua in the rest of the New Testament where it's also found? Because of this modification to Jesus from Jesus, I-E-S-U-S in the 1611 KJV and in the 1560 Geneva. Jesus was also what was found in the Greek text. Of course, Jesus is what's found in the Russian text. So it was a modification that took place there in the 1700s that brought us this J into Jesus, okay? But the name truly should have been interpreted as a Joshua in the English, and in the Hebrew, it's YAHUSHA, okay? All right, so if all of the translators understood that the name Jesus was properly translated as Joshua, then why wouldn't they translate all the occurrences of Jesus as Joshua? And if they were concerned with the true name of Mashiach, why wouldn't they look to the Hebrew name of Joshua, Yod He Vav Shin Ayin, and determine that his birth name was actually YAHUSHA? Why didn't they do that? Popularity, maybe. Customized use, tradition. There are lots of reasons why they didn't do it. But we know that for those who seek accuracy in publishing, we had to make the modification that was consistent with the text. And so now you see Joshua, the son of Nun in Hebrews, but who is this YAHUSHA that appears in Zechariah? Who's that YAHUSHA? Very important, because he comes to judge the living and the dead. A turban is given to him. Righteousness is given to him. And no sin is imputed to him. How does this happen? Read in Zechariah and see who YAHUSHA is. So how did they know that this was properly Joshua and not Jesus? Well, it has to do with the fact that the Cepher YAHUSHA, the book of Joshua, does not include the word Shabbat anywhere in it. Why not? Well, let's take a look at this passage. If you look at YAHUSHA or Joshua, chapter 1, verses 12 through 15, it reads like this. And to the Reubenim and to the Gadim and to half the tribe of Manasseh spoke YAHUSHA, saying, Remember at the word which Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, commanded you, saying, Yahweh Elohechem has given you rest and has given you at this land. Your women, your little ones, your cattle shall remain in the land which Moshe gave you on this side of the Yarden. But ye shall pass before your brethren armed. all the mighty men of valor, and help them, until Yahweh have given your brethren rest, as he has given you, and they have also possessed at the land which Yahweh Elohim gives them. Then ye shall return unto the land of your possession and enjoy it, which Moses, Yahweh's servants, had gone to on this side of the Yarden towards the sunrise. And so you see, here you have Joshua saying, look, you're not getting the Sabbath until we're done liberating the land. Now, I think that was a mistake, even disobedient on the part of Joshua. But this was his command. And so did he speak of another day? Yes, he spoke of another day. When we have captured the land, yeah, then you'll get the Shabbat, right? So YAHUSHA, at his own determination, elected to deprive the tribes of Yasharel of the Shabbat until such a time as they conquered all of the Adamah Kodesh, or the Holy Land. Now, let's go back and take a look again in Hebrews 4:8 at Cepher. For if YAHUSHA the son of Nun had given them rest, perchance another would speak again of this day. At no point did HaMashiach take away the Sabbath rest. All of the later translators would so conclude. Part of that which warranted such a conclusion includes a correct interpretation of the next verse, verse 9. There remains, therefore, a Shabbat for the people of Yah. The word found here that is interpreted as Shabbat in the Greek is this word Sabbatismos. Sabbatismos. Now Thayer's lexicon tells us that Sabbatismos means, first of all, to keep the Shabbat. It's also construed as a keeping Sabbath, or a blessed rest from the toils and troubles, i.e. a Sabbath rest. A Sabbath rest. There remains, therefore, a keeping Sabbath for the people of Yah. That's one extrapolation from that. There remains, therefore, a blessed rest from toils and troubles, a Sabbath rest for the people of Yah. So we see here that in the book of Ivriym, when correctly interpreted, we find that there is a rest. Those who say, I rest in Mashiach, well, that rest is delineated very carefully by Mashiach and very carefully in the book of Ivriym, to say it is a Shabbat rest, a seventh day of rest. And I encourage you, pray for the Shabbat, that the Shabbat be given unto you, because when the Shabbat is, you will be greatly and richly blessed. And you will be blessed, number one, from having rest from your toils and troubles. And number two, you will be blessed because you are being obedient to the fourth commandment. You are being obedient to the word of Yah as he has set it forth before you. And more importantly, you will have the sign between you and him that he is your Elohim and you are his children. So I hope you're blessed in this word. Come back and see us again. Thank you.